to Beauty Marks Podcast. My name is Lulu Savion, and welcome back to another episode. Here we talk about all things healing, cultivating community, and embracing our story. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. All of that helps other people to get to know about the show, the impact, the stories that we're doing here, as well as I am here at High Hello Labs in downtown Orlando in this beautiful studio space and with an amazing producer behind the scenes that's helping me out today, Chris. And I am just excited for today's episode because we are going to be talking about healing fatigue. And as you know, this show is really about personal growth, personal development, healing. And I think that I have not talked about this, but this is a very common thing when it comes to your healing journey. And so I was talking to Chris before the show, and he has suggested, and we started talking about this off camera. And I think that this is a very important topic when it comes to when you have been on your healing journey and you are in your healing girl era, and that is your identity. Like, you are healing, you are growing, you are all about peace, inner peace. That becomes something that you can eventually get so overwhelmed by. What does that look like? That can look like you not wanting to engage with anything else aside from like personal growth or healing. So that's like consuming yourself in like books and self-help and podcasts and therapy. And maybe that's like kind of like isolating yourself to be in a more peaceful place from like all the negative things, which that can sound really good in theory. However, over time, what that does is that can become your identity, and you can get to the place that you feel so overwhelmed with thinking about oh my God, like healing, I have to do more, like I'm not good enough yet, I have to do more things to become better. And so the actual definition of healing fatigue is it refers to a state where individuals may feel exhausted or overwhelmed by the demands of the healing journey. And that can be manifested physically, emotionally, and in all different areas. So that can also include feeling dizzy, feeling muscle or joint pain, feeling like off, like brain fog. You can just feel like you have trouble concentrating, and you may cry or get angry when you start kind of like thinking about your emotions. Like, it's like you're just so involved into that. And I think that multiple things can happen from that, because I feel like sometimes when you're trying to work through something that you just have gone through, and you maybe just went through a breakup or some trauma, and that you're navigating through that healing journey, I think that a lot of us do dive in head deep. And I would say that I'm one of them. I remember when I got out of my relationship and I had been dealing with high functioning depression and anxiety, I went to therapy. I was into all the self-help books. I listened to all the podcasts. I was immersed into that world, and that helped me at the time. The first year, I needed that. I needed that structure. I needed that information. I was gaining awareness. I was working through a lot of stuff. But if I'm honest, the second year, I got so fatigued about it, because it felt like I was reading more books that told me more problems that I had to work through, and then my trauma, and then I was still getting triggered by stuff, and I was still navigating through things, and I just felt so overwhelmed that I actually had to take a break off of therapy and off of self-help. And so for about 6 months, I did not go to therapy. And during that time, though, I was actually applying the information that I had learned. I was actually applying and putting into practice into my life the things that I had read and learned. Because information and knowledge, it's nothing if we don't apply it and we don't put it into practice in our life, and unless we're tested through that. And so a huge part of my healing was because of those breaks that I took, that I was able to then live life and not consume myself with like, okay, I need to be better. I think it's great. Like, personal growth, healing is so great. And that is a foundation of this podcast, because I feel like instead of surviving, we can thrive in our life through our healing. But at the same time, we're still human, and we still go through days that are not so great. We have thoughts that are maybe negative. We maybe act out in a way that you're like, wow, like my future self is going to be so mad at me because I did this today and I was impulsive, or I did this, or and I feel like when we kind of put ourselves at that place, that you just kind of are never good enough because you're always striving for more, then you're not able to accept yourself through your journey. I think that healing is accepting yourself, even the broken or working or unhealed parts of yourself. Like that is healing, and knowing that it's a lifelong journey. It's not just like a microwave that you just like, if you put it for 3 minutes, it's gonna be healed and perfect when it comes out. Like no, like healing is a lifelong journey. And I feel like when you don't make it your identity and you just embrace and learn different tools to apply in your everyday life, you will become so much better for it. And so some examples of things that you can do to manage your healing fatigue is pacing yourselves within your journey. So give yourself time to recover, to heal. You don't need to push or force your healing to happen, to be like, okay, I need to listen to like 10 podcasts and read 10 books. I remember I was reading, like, I would say reading was a huge factor also. Like, again, like I am not against it. I remember reading Body Keeps the Score, like Codependent No More, Boundaries. Those are huge helpful books during that journey. Attached, which was talking about anxious attachment. Those were pivotal books that I know that when I read those books, I was able to apply them into my life. And those are still, but I read maybe like 50 other books too at that time. And I felt like I wasn't really grasping all the information because it was so much information. It was like an overwhelming of all the other things. Like, okay, now with time management, now with my conflict management, now with the way I communicate, now with boundaries, now with healing from my trauma bonded relationship, now with manipulation. Like there were so many things I was learning at the time, and it was just a lot. So I resonate with knowing and recommending to take it slow. And honestly, doing things that are aside that bring joy or that spark joy. And so it's doing different activities, like going on walks, going to dance classes, being around people and friends. All your friends, even if let's say you're on your healing journey and you're like, nobody understands me, like I am on my own solo journey, it's still important to be around community and to be around people that you don't have to talk about all your trauma and about your healing all the time. And I think that when you can also like separate that and just know that it's like, okay, I'm going to go have fun. Like it's not always about, becoming my better self. You'll be able to have like a balance within your life. And so I think that that's a huge part of where healing fatigue can arise, is just always thinking that I need to heal like now and I need to be fully well now, and that can become your identity, when I believe healing is a lifelong journey and that you can still live life despite that. And even when you've gone through something very traumatic, or you've gone through abuse, or you've gone through trauma, or you're like, man, like I don't like who I am now, and I need to work on this. Just knowing that you will have days that you're not that person, you're not that great, and having compassion with yourself. I think a huge part of that is when we don't know how to have compassion with ourselves, then we are so very hard on ourselves and hard on others because of our expectations of like, I need to, what's the fastest way for me to get through this? And a huge part of healing is to feel it. And feeling is through time and through situations that come up. I would say a huge part of my own healing journey has been post stuff that I have gone through in therapy. Like I went through my trauma healing, my childhood healing, my trauma bonded relationship. That was so painful, and going through that process. But then I'm in therapy now more for like my other issues that I sometimes struggle with body image, with not having so much self-compassion with myself, with being a perfectionist, of things that I'm trying to like get out of my own way because I can get in my way. But it's not always focused on the trauma. I think there are seasons that you should, and having that support system is great. But there's other seasons that you living out in the wild and like you living out in real life is the best teacher. And having that support system, having those outlets of like journaling, or just having fun, planning trips that you look forward to, doing life. That when you're on those trips, I have been on trips where it's like, I'm able to reflect on things that I am working through in the peace and quiet, like in the mountains, or like I'm at the beach and I'm like, wow, like, I feel like I've come so far in this area, or I feel at peace, or, oh wow, like before I felt so much anger towards this person, and now today I saw them and I didn't feel that way. Like, wow, those are ways that you see your healing, but that's through situations that happen, that's with time. And so knowing that it does not have to be your identity, it can be a great thing to heal, but you can also get to the place of healing fatigue. And that's when you need to evaluate, take a step back, and also know that all the sometimes bad emotions, we label a lot of things bad or toxic, but all of those things you can't avoid. We can't live in a bubble. But when you're healing, it feels safe. Healing feels safe. And I know even for me, when it comes to dating, that's what I feel. I feel like my healing and my like bubble feels so safe, because I'm like, oh my God, but like if I expose myself and I start getting out there again, then it's like I can potentially get hurt. And that's the core fear. And I feel like until you start seeing like, why am I hiding behind, or like feeling so, in my bubble of like my healing, where it's like, what are you fearing, or what's within you that you're like a little scared to really confront, or really work through, or allow yourself to be vulnerable in. So just know that healing is great. And I think you are able to heal through the hardest things that you have walked through, but just know that doesn't have to be all of it. And healing is through things and situations that you walk through. And the more that you can see healing as like, I'm working through like my everyday, and like things are going to happen, and I'm going to maybe do really, really good. And then I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to do like really, really good, and something's going to happen. And I'm going to feel like this, but just knowing it's like you're still evolving and growing, that is great progress. So focus on that progress, not on perfection, and not on feeling so safe that you don't allow other experiences to show you, like maybe how we sometimes cut off like certain people, or we cut off certain experiences because we're like, no, we don't want to feel anything else except feeling zen and at peace. It's like some of those situations are going to show you areas within that you have to grow, and they're going to bring up stuff that you have to heal, so not everything's bad. And so just knowing that it's a process, it's a journey, and I've been there, and I'm rooting for you on this healing journey, but just know that it's not everything, and that you are a work in progress, and that is okay. So if this has helped you in any way, I will also put some helpful books that I mentioned in this podcast below, as well as other episodes. But honestly, I am proud of you for how far you have come. You are doing better than you think you are. And just know that you are not alone. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and I'll see you guys next week.